Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals to state senators to mayors to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about.
My guest today is Mayor Yadira Ramos-Herbert from New Rochelle, which is the fastest growing city in New York. The first woman of color to lead her city, Mayor Ramos-Herbert is a force of nature. She talks about the New Rochelle way, which is about driving economic growth without displacing residents, and how permitting reform, investment, and intentionality has resulted in more housing units and lower rents. We also talk about the Trump administration's canceling of federal funds and how that's affecting her and other cities, how she's been able to meaningfully engage residents of all ages, and what her 16-year-old self would think about her now. Tears may have been shed. I was really, truly inspired. I think you will be too. Enjoy. Mayor, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super flattered to be here.
I'm very excited to talk to you. I was so grateful to get to meet you at the end of the year, the New Deal conference. I'm so glad you could make it, your first one.
Yes, it was amazing.
I'm so glad you're part of this network, and just excited to hear what you're up to in New Rochelle. You're doing such amazing work, and want to talk to you kind of a little bit about what you're doing and how you got into this business to begin with. But I might start a little bit with New Rochelle. I was so interested to read that it's the fastest growing city in New York. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about where you are and a little bit about your city.
Absolutely. So we are about 18 miles north of Midtown Manhattan. We are a suburb of about 80,000, 85,000 residents. And in the last 10 years, we've authorized 11,000 units, or as I like to call them, kitchen table moments and homes, principally in the core of our downtown, using a transit-oriented development kind of process or mapping, if you will. Our train station is the second busiest on the New Haven line, second to Grand Central. So just to give you a sense of like utility. Wow. In a few years, you're going to be able to also go to the west side with Penn Station access. So you east or west side, just from our mighty 3 tracks at New Rochelle. We also carry Amtrak, so you can go to Boston or DC, and we have 9 regional bus lines. So we have built this density around the transit-oriented development. We've authorized about 2/3 have been completed. And it's just been a really exciting time to sort of see this renaissance of New Rochelle.
Amazing. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but you were very gracious to write a piece for our Substack. I'll put a plug in called The Roadmap, Strategies and Solutions from Outside the Beltway. And you will be having a piece that appears soon where you talked about some of that growth and the New Rochelle model, as you called it. I thought it was fascinating. And I loved what you were talking about thinking about this growth, but not displacement of longtime New Rochelle residents, and also simultaneously needing to tackle the affordability issue.
Yes.
Tell me, so what is the New Rochelle model?
I love it. Yes.
Tell me what that is.
I love it. So the New Rochelle model back in 2015, it was an approach to streamline a lot of the processes and really kind of do an upfront assessment of what it would take for developers to have assurances to invest and build in New Rochelle. So the professional staff, along with the council and with a lot of resident input. And personally, what I love about my part in this journey is I was a resident at the time, not eyeing council, not eyeing mayor. Back in 2015, 2016, my kids were 6 and 3. I was working full time in Manhattan. But I remember thinking like, I would love our downtown to have a little bit more of something. And I remember these like community meetings about like, what would you want to see? What would you like to see in our city? And so taking the community feedback, working with council and staff, as I mentioned, they identified different sites within the downtown for that would be open for building, if you will. And then because we knew the sites that were going to be permitted, we could do the environmental impact review, we could do theoretical development assessments. And so when you apply to build a building in New Rochelle, you can be approved in 90 days. So there's a lot of assurances that developers are receiving when they decide to invest in New Rochelle. So that's been really exciting. And I think that's been a direct correlation to why we've been able to authorize 11,000 units. The part about displacement, yeah, the sites were like underutilized sites. I mean, some of them are old parking lots that people weren't even really using or parking in. I think one of our sites is a Catholic school that closed down, and that was an empty building for a while. So we haven't, I think only 2 people have had to move as a result of our development, because we were just really identifying empty lots and sites that could support the density but didn't require displacement. And then the other part that was exciting, or has been exciting, is we have a 10% affordability requirement. And we're actually trending a little closer to 20% of our units are below market in the affordable range. So to your point, we're really thinking about this holistically, comprehensively, but still sort of using strategies that help to catalyze underutilized sites in our downtown.
So much good stuff in there. I kind of want to unpack a little bit of it.
Yeah.
So on the 90-day permitting, when did that come into place for you all? Was that something you did, or was in place when you took over as mayor? Because I think that's a lot of cities are trying to figure out how to get this building done, and it feels like that's what you're saying is a big a reason that you're able to get some of these units approved so quickly and so effectively.
Yeah. So 2015, we partnered with a private company to help kind of finance some of the environmental impact reviews, do zoning analysis, help us support changing the zoning code. So we just did a front load of all of the, to your point, what tend to be the sort of hiccups as buildings are approved, and the kind of bureaucracy that can sort of create a little bit of a chokehold, if you will, in the process. And so we were able to just make all of those kind of bureaucratic changes back between 2016 and 2017, just really doing that in-depth assessment. And then starting in 2017, we started receiving applications for buildings. To your point, I was, as I mentioned, I was a mom. I joined the city council in 2020, still a mom actually, and became mayor in 2024. So I was not on the council during that time, but as a resident, I recall the engagement with community members. And then through my time at council and as mayor, I've obviously understood the process a little bit more. And I talk to the developers and say, like, why us? Because some developers are building, they've had 2, 3, 4 buildings. I'm like, why are you sticking with us? And what they frame is that sort of upfront assessment of understanding what the environmental impact report is, understanding how high they can go, understanding what the tax abatement process is going to look like. They have all of that assurance at the front load. I mean, we are 18 miles north of New York City, as I mentioned, where a building there can take 10 years to get through authorization and zoning, and we can do that in 90 days. The part I should also add is the council set the policy, identifying the locations, the height, and things like that, but we do not approve each project. Because of the zoning and all of the requirements that have already been established by the council, our staff kind of come in and close the deal. So we've been able to also kind of stay away from a little bit of the NIMBY energy. Not to say that residents don't have concerns, and I can talk about how I engage with residents a little bit later. But it really has allowed us to just kind of stay on task and on track with decisions that were made ahead of time by council staff working with community members.
That's amazing. And also, what role did I know that you guys were designated a pro-housing city by Governor Hochul
Yes.
during your tenure, early in your tenure.
Yep.
So how does that play into your ability to get some of this done?
Well, it helps us with other grants. I mean, we have the housing, we're bringing in density with respect to people, but a city isn't just buildings and people. It's sort of the assets that surround this new density, this new growth. So we have been working on investing in our small businesses, bringing more parks and green space to the downtown. We're also looking to elevate and enhance our train station. As I mentioned, given its volume and its sort of place in our region, it deserves to have a little bit of an upgrade, a little glow up, as the kids say. And so the pro housing gives us kind of extra points and stars on all of our grant application, which have been helpful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let's go back to that engagement of the community. So, I mean, a lot of
That's my favorite part.
communities and cities across the country are, struggling with affordability, trying to build more in the hopes of bringing costs down, and yet are running into this kind of, the not in my backyard attitude of just don't build it here. So, how has that been in New Rochelle?
So I think because I came in 2024 as mayor and did have some time as a council member, I feel like I've been able to have a sense of what it is to support this initiative, but the questions and concerns people have, that maybe come to me either just as a mom at the pickup line, as a new council member. And so one of the things I really wanted to focus on as mayor was engagement. And so last year, 2025, I kicked off a series called Coffee with the Mayor So every month throughout our city, I just on a Saturday or a Sunday, because we have a strong Orthodox Jewish community. We just want to make sure we're observant for everyone. We host these coffees, very chill, very informal. I'm in like jeans and usually some like city logoed sweatshirt. I have other council members come, our city manager, many of our commissioners have come, and even elected at state, federal, and county level have popped in as well. And we just listen. What is the concern? What is the pain point? And I made sure to also host many in the downtown. And what's great is then residents can literally pull me outside and be like, do you hear that noise? Do you see that dust? Do you see those plates? Do you see the dog poop? Do you see the trash can overflowing? And with staff, we're literally seeing it on the ground, can bring it back and effectuate policy to try to make it better, but also give good information about the benefits of development. And so because of the new sort of revenue stream that we have with the buildings, we're able, for example, we launched a program called the Vanguard, $2.25 million to support small businesses. We've given out about 15 grants. Some are new, some are existing businesses in the downtown, to bring a yoga studio to Main Street, to help upgrade an escape room, to bring restaurants, to expand a coffee shop. We have public, more parklets and plazas. We have a free electric shuttle that you can call like an Uber that goes throughout the city. These are direct results of the investment in the downtown and the resources that we have from that. So it's like a symbiotic cadence, right? Like hosting the opportunity for an informal gathering. You don't have to send an email. What's our email? What's the formality around it? You don't have to come to a public hearing. We're all getting coffee or tea or having a walk in the neighborhood. Come and bring your questions, but let us also share information with you so that we're sort of feeding each other with the right information and at the same time. And I think it's been really helpful. I mean, we are a coastal city, so we have flood mitigation problems, with climate change being so very real. We were able to do a comprehensive assessment of all of the watersheds in our city, identify 170 projects, 150 projects to help reduce stormwater mitigation, and then invest $10 million a year in the efforts to actually fix those problems, right? So when we talk about affordability, we're getting ahead of those sort of like pop-up household expenses that happen when there's flooding and helping people really retain their assets, their homes. But that's because of development. And so when I remind folks of the tangible things that exist now that did not exist before 2016, I think we get a little bit more buy-in and understanding. The other data point that lately I've been really interested in, it's easy because we're a suburb of the city to be like, oh, it's only folks from New York City, which is not. I'm from Queens, New York, so I'm a city girl myself that moved up north. But actually, 24% of our residents are new residents in the downtown. Our New Rochelle residents who maybe had the single family home, they have like 10 or 15 years left before they retire. Their kids are out of the house. They don't want to have the big house to shovel. They want to live in more of an urban setting. And then the other 24% come from other parts of Westchester. So when I tell residents, we're building for us. We're not only building for a young sort of New York City couple, we're building for us at 48%. That also, so again, using data, but also just demystifying access and bringing us to your neighborhood so that you can literally show us how you're experiencing this, I think has been really helpful in building some more support from residents about what's going on.
That's so great. That's so great. I want to talk more about the engagement and kind of where we find ourselves politically. But one other data point I read when I was prepping for this is you're not just building, which you've got the receipts and goods on the ground, that you've got more units on the ground. You actually have seen rents come down. Yeah. It's actually kind of shocking, right? So tell people about that, because that was very impressive.
It is. The Wall Street Journal did an assessment and found that from the years 2020 to 2023, our rents went down a little over 2%. Again, we're right next to New York City, right? And Westchester County is an affluent county adjacent to one of the world's most expensive cities. And so to have a validator like the Wall Street Journal tout that metric is just another external validation that the model is working. And to your point about affordability, there's just real opportunities here to have the home that we should all be guaranteed. Everyone deserves, it's just a fundamental human right, a place to live, but also have a little bit of control over those expenses. So it's really exciting.
That's so exciting. So back on your coffees with the mayor and other city leaders, I feel like there's so much belief that people are not engaged, right? That people are checked out. So what kind of crowds are you getting from that? And then also kind of what's most on their mind? What are you hearing most from your folks?
I mean, the model has kind of proliferated. It's, on the weekends at one of our coffee shops, I visit all of our senior buildings. I did that last year, about 13 buildings. And then we also did something else. We brought the city hall to your backyard. Every commissioner, our city manager, myself, and the council rep for different parts of the city went to like a local school, for example, and presented like how the work plan or our plans for this area will affect you. But instead of town hall style, after the presentation, we just had residents talk directly to commissioners to avoid just some of the natural kind of performative element that I think town halls bring, which is fine. And initially we got some pushback, but towards the end of each one, they would tell me, I get what you're trying to do. You just want us to get answers. And I'm like, yes, exactly. From the people on the ground. And then from the commissioners, the feedback I got was it's helpful to hear on the ground as we're thinking about budget planning for next year. So I mean, at my coffees with the mayor, the average attendance is anywhere from like 25 to 50, to be honest.
Wow.
Our community discussions, we would have anywhere from like 50 to 70 folks come out. My senior buildings can be 25 to 30 folks that come out. And then if any neighborhood event that, invites me, I go and bring the same pack. I had 15 Girl Scouts last night, and I have a packet for the coffee with the mayor. And I gave them the packet, and we just talked about, like what's the mayor working on, and so that was exciting too. So it's on my website. So it's just like, and there's a QR code. It's just like one standardized document that goes through what's going on in the downtown, the link, our transit center rehab, our stormwater mitigation, the circuit, contact information. And I think people appreciate it. I really, really, really do. I think initially people thought it would be more town hall style. And when they saw that it was just about conversations and not just having like 2 or 3 people dominate the mic and you can't really respond and you can't, people have really appreciated the format. Some people just come because they're like, we can't believe the mayor's actually going to be here. And then I'm there in like a hoodie with one of the many cups of coffee I'll have for the day. And we just chat it out. And I really value it. Honestly, I feel like we're getting a lot done by having that relationship that way.
I love that. Well, and you talked about, the fact that they might point out the trash or the dog poop or whatever else as you're standing there. What's most on your constituents' minds right now? What are you hearing from them?
It's a good point. I mean, I think affordability, it depends on the demographic. For my seniors, it's definitely affordability. The cost of groceries, they're on a super fixed income and just being really scared. Like even if like their rent goes up $20, even though it's like, they're subsidized and everything else, like any little bit really hurts. And so it's been helpful to hear that because then I've been partnering with our Office of the Aging to just make sure that we are getting them resources and food and meals and expanding the resources that the department has. So we have like a senior center, which has robust attendance. But as I mentioned, we have about 13 buildings that are designated senior buildings. So last year I visited on my own just to hear. This year I'm bringing someone from our Office of the Aging to each of the buildings so that they can hear about the benefits of signing up, that there's transportation for doctor visits, that there's food that can be available. You can go get lunch and bring a to-go plate home, for like $50, and that fee's like for 5 years. So $10 a year, you can get all of these resources. Our county clerk, I learned, does senior scam prevention workshops. So I'm going to bring him to some of them. He offered to bring or have someone from his team probably come and just engage with our seniors that way. So my seniors' affordability, I would think, is tantamount. For younger people, I love working with our high school. I have good relationship. We have 2 universities here, have really good relationships. I think they're worried about the future and jobs and what does that look like if they carry some like school debt, like, is it grad school or something else? And so letting them know about government employment for me has been important. And we have internships. We, again, development. We've been able to hire 500 people ages 14 to 24. And I invited all of the city hall ones to come to me for a lunch. And my college ones were like, this is such a tremendous opportunity to get paid and get real experience in the Department of Finance or Department of Public Works. And I want to be an engineer, I'm studying engineering rather, and to see how that can work. So to give them that money, but also real skill sets. And they were saying, like, I think I have a better shot at getting jobs because I've had real tactile experience in such a booming city. And for me also with them, just for our younger people, reminding them government is a good place to be. Like if you're into social justice or entrepreneurial, like come here. We make the rules, we impact the rules. Like you can help really galvanize and bring up opportunities for other people. So I think that's been a nice conversation. I think for families with children, and I'll say children broadly, little or older, I think affordability, I think it's across the board, just like expenses. Like the grocery one hits the most. I
Yeah.
think the grocery one hits the most. And we do have a neighborhood community sort of food, I don't want to, I'm saying it in Spanish, sorry, pantry. And they've talked about how their clients have increased pretty significantly. I think last year they were saying they were at like they were at pandemic numbers when they closed
Wow.
out 25. And people don't
Wow.
think about that for New Rochelle, this like affluent city near New York City. So it's making sure that we provide resources to those who are feeding our neighbors, right? So this year we launched a nonprofit grant application program, the city, and we're soliciting applications and proposals from different community-based organizations and to give them money to empower them to continue helping the residents that they already have a trust with. So as we think of affordability, I think it's been really exciting for me to be here and think about different ways that we can sort of help fill the gaps, or at least bring information to help fill some of those gaps.
Yeah, you're doing so much cool stuff. There's so much that you were just talking about that is just so amazing. I was in DC last week with the U.S. conference. Well, the U.S. conference mayors
Yeah.
was there. We had a lot of New Deal mayors for a couple different events and talking to some press and other things.
Yeah.
One of the things that came up a lot, and so maybe it dovetails with some of the stuff you're talking about. Some of what you just talked about is expensive. Some is not, making sure people know about the resources and some of that. So, some of the mayors were bringing up the fact that that under the Biden administration, there've been a lot of investment with new money into cities, and that a lot of that money under the Trump administration has been either pulled back, or there's some uncertainty around it, or there's some new rules that actually, put it in jeopardy. I'm just curious about, you're doing so many amazing things. Obviously, that's working, that people are getting what they need. Are you worried about funding for any of the things you're talking about? What's that process looking like?
It actually breaks my heart because I am operating in the space of undeterred because, my residents are counting on me to figure it out, right? I can't be sad, and we have this project called The Link, and it was to convert a stretch of a like Robert Moses project, like 6 lanes of a highway that bulldozed through an African-American community. And $16 million of that project money was pulled back by the Trump administration under the Big Beautiful Bill because the grant was neighborhood access and equity. And so to be working
in the name, essentially. I mean, that's just so infuriating. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But that's
it's no. I've had many, trust me. Yes. And I worked on The Link as when I wasn't on council, I was just a neighborhood mother. The park in my neighborhood was not great. And I just started advocating and that dovetails a little bit into why I'm even here. That's how I got my story started. But I just wanted to have a nice park for my 2-year-old when I came home from work, and we didn't have one in our community. And I just started attending. So I've been working on this since like 2017, and we were really in a good place because we had received the $16 million just a year, my first year as mayor, 2024, under Pete Buttigieg. And so we just had the announcement, grants come with rules and restrictions. We were kind of figuring out the design and everything else. And then we got word that it was going to be pulled. And so
explicitly for the reason you said, which is because the grant was under this equity. And so where is it now?
So we've had to pivot. And we're, right now we're going to scale back the design, significantly, but we're going to scale it back and bring something because the neighborhood definitely deserves. It's 6 lanes of a highway in a suburb. It was supposed to connect our interstate to one of our local parkways. And it just for different reasons didn't happen, but it just cuts through. I lived adjacent to it, and I'm a runner in the mornings. I know what it's like to try to dodge 6 lanes of traffic, like having my son learn how to ride a bike and just getting to, contacting with cars. I mean, it's seeing car accidents from my kitchen window. So I lived it. This is not like a mayor thing. I've lived the inequity that this brought to our community. And so right now we're scaling back the design a little bit. I think the element that we're looking into some stormwater mitigation, because it was going to be 3 parts: scaling back traffic, stormwater mitigation underneath, and then creating a stretch for economic development in a community that's just been underserved, really. And so right now we're looking at some of the stormwater design, and I'm just on the phone with our state delegation, our county delegation, and lately starting to dabble in talking with philanthropies, some of the larger philanthropies, to see if they can start helping us fill some of the gaps to at least launch the project and have a groundbreaking this year. But to lose $16 million simply because of a title and that was committed and promised by the federal government is, talk about a gut punch. But again, undeterred, I believe in this project. I can talk about the validity of this project from so many different metrics, and I'm really leaning on other levels of government to help us fill these gaps.
What is the response from the philanthropy community so far? Is there, because I'm hearing this a lot all over the country,
Yeah.
that people are being asked to step in to do what, really the federal government had been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they understand. I definitely have a sense of an empathetic sense and understanding the power that they play. But I haven't received money yet, just to be plain, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
but I suspect that they're getting a lot of ask, right, in
yeah,
ways that they haven't before.
yeah,
Getting asked to fund a reconstructed, redesigned park, probably like not what we usually do. But
right.
I do get a lot of folks who have been asking for information. A couple of actually specific groups asking for information, and so I'm just look. My job is to defend, support, and sell my city, and I will do that. And so whatever I got to do to get to 16 million, a little bit from here, a little bit from here. We all have budgets. We all have to figure
Yeah,
out how to make the dollar stretch. That's how I see this exercise. No different than running a household budget, and figuring out how I can pull and borrow to get this
yeah.
project at least ground broken, with the hopes that maybe in a future federal administration we can recoup some of that dollars and then continue the project moving forward.
Yeah. Well, again, not to belabor, but I mean, the fact that it was promised money that it was then pulled back is just, then the sunk cost you already have. I mean, it's really,
Exactly.
it's
Designing
really insane.
years,
It's,
I
yeah,
mean, literally.
it's
And then it
so
brought us back to
inefficient.
now we have to redesign, right? So that's an additional expense to figure out. But we're
Yeah,
committed to breaking ground this year, even if it's a much scaled back, because I think also we owe it to residents, right? It's been 7 or 8 years, and you want them to keep faith that these projects aren't just pictures, on a jumbotron. That we heard their concerns and we're being
yeah.
responsive and bringing it back to them, the change that needs to happen.
I mean, definitely a theme that I'm hearing from you and that I heard from the mayors last week too is just this perseverance, or this idea that we got to keep moving forward despite all the uncertainty, despite the chaos. I don't know if ICE has been an issue for you in your city at all and how that's going, but there's just so much chaos happening, and but
Yeah.
at the same time you've got to deliver for your constituents. That's your job. That's what they're expecting, and that dichotomy must be very hard to manage day to day.
Yeah, no, it is hard. I mean, our community is incredibly diverse, 30% Latino, a little under 20% African American. And we have 7 synagogues, a host of Christian churches. I mean, we have a Mormon, I mean, we have like New Rochelle has it all. And there have been some ICE arrests. I, my heart though goes out to the cities like a Minneapolis. I mean, they are, so I don't talk about it that way because I can only imagine what they're going through. um I'm the first woman and person of any color to hold this office, and my mother's an immigrant. My mother moved here from the Dominican Republic with my grandmother in the late 60s. My grandparents are from Puerto Rico. So on a lot of on my father's side rather, so I identify strongly as a very proud child of an immigrant. And my grandparents in Puerto Rico came here, lived in they lived in the same projects from the 50s until they died in the 90s. My father and my mother bought a small house in Queens, and their granddaughter is the mayor of a city, right? Like my trajectory,
Okay.
only happens in this country, but only because of their work. And I've always been aware of the sacrifices that they've made to leave that country and come here. And so for me, it is painful. And when I talk to our residents who are Spanish speaking or maybe undocumented or actually have their paperwork, but just everyone is just scared. It
Yeah.
is hard and it does come up at these coffees. It does come up at different, conversations. And I speak Spanish. So residents are very comfortable speaking to me in Spanish and talking to me about their concerns. So it is really hard to do that. Even with the chaos that this administration is bringing to us, I believe in us, though, in New Rochelle. And I still genuinely believe in the goodness of people and that we will support and care for each other. And I think my job is to model a leadership that's compassionate and loving and empathetic and responsive, but undeterred, right? Because if we all collapse, then all the work that we've worked for both individually or as a group, as a government, it'll be for naught. And I won't have that happen on my watch.
Yeah, well, you're so inspiring. Tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned it, but kind of what got you were not in politics. You talked
No.
about your family and that
Yeah.
trajectory, but you were, I think, a lawyer in Manhattan. You worked at Columbia Law School, which is we have a whole conversation
Yes.
on Columbia and Trump, tell me, how you
Yeah.
ended up in elected office, and was that a surprise to you?
Sure thing. What's funny is I would say yes, it's a surprise that I'm mayor, but I found this like autobiography I wrote when I was 16, and it said, I want to be in politics. So I guess,
Oh,
and my daughter
amazing.
was like, okay. So I want to be honest with, with my pathway. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was an attorney, at different firms in the New York City area for about 8 or 9 years. And then I love the skill set I learned as an attorney. I still really am grateful for it, but I never really saw myself kind of finishing my career at a law firm. I've always loved working with young people and youth. And so then I started working at Columbia Law School in 2013. I had a couple promotions. I finished as an associate dean of student and registration services, just kind of like from the minute you said yes to graduation and all of the kind of requirements and accreditation, but just, being a young person and managing life happening in a very strict kind of academic environment. That was about 10 years, 10 and a half years. So from 2013 actually till I became mayor, I was there. But then I think, as I mentioned, I started just kind of going to community meetings, and simultaneously there was like a vacancy on our library board. And in New Rochelle, you vote for your library board trustee members. And a friend who was on the board at the time was like, we don't have anyone with young kids on the board. And there's a vacancy. I'd love to put you up for an appointment. And then you'd have to run for your term. My kids were like 6 and 3. So that's my first elected for it. And I thought it was kind of cool. Like, mommy's on a
Very
ballot,
cool.
and
My
like,
mother was a public school. My mother was a public school librarian, so I have a very
love
soft spot.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, my
I was like,
librarians are close to my heart.
mommy's on a ballot and mommy gets to vote for budgets on books.
I
Like,
love that. I
nerds
love
like me.
that.
I was like, this is amazing. And like, not for nothing, our libraries are like social work hubs. You know what I mean? The more I
Totally.
learned about the GED, English language classes, like job opportunities, the workshops, like tax prep, I thought this was just what a blessing to have a chance to have a say on that as a mother with young children. Around that time, though, I started going to the community meetings I mentioned about, like park improvement, traffic concerns in the neighborhood. And then my council member at the time asked me to like join a task force that brought the link to fruition, believe it or not. And then when he decided to not run, he asked me to run. And I was like, oh no. Like, I had my first promotion at Columbia. I was really excited. And politics can be hard. It can be mean
Yes.
and like aggressive. And I just want to do work and be with my kids. Like, I think they say you have to ask a woman 7 times. I'm confident he did. And then at one point he just said, like, look, you're doing the work with me. And he's like, and I'm the one voting. Why don't you just, and then I figured, well, why not? Okay. And I thought that was going to be like the peak of my sort of elected office. And then when I was on the council, New Rochelle, I was sworn in January 2020, March 2020, COVID hit, and New Rochelle was like the only city that had like the National Guard. It was a lot. Like, for a minute, it was like New Rochelle was the only city with like this COVID restrictions. So
Wow.
imagine a brand new council member. And then my district is the only one in New Rochelle that has public housing. So when the schools closed, that meant some of my kids were not going to eat. Like, my
Right.
district had public housing and then senior, like, subsidized housing. So I immediately go to like, what are my seniors going to eat? What are we doing? So I really had to kind of learn very quickly how to be effective and get stuff done and work with different levels of government. Local government can be. And then in June of 2020, so 6 months later, we had a police killing of a Black man, and a week after George Floyd. And so again, like, learning by fire while managing a pandemic with small kids at home and being the council rep. It happened in my district about a mile away from where I lived. Our governor at the time asked for like a police reform committee. The mayor asked me to chair it. And at one point he said it was the most like transformative changes to PD that he'd seen in decades. He'd been mayor for about 17 years and on the council for 10 before that. And so I think then folks started asking me to consider running for mayor. I think he had communicated he was stepping down. I was definitely like, oh no, like,
But again,
no,
oh no,
like,
again, oh
I was
no.
doing great. I had another promotion at Columbia. I was now overseeing 2 departments. Like, I felt like I was hitting my stride. And, as a district rep, you can really focus in on your neighborhood. I was literally impacting the boundaries of my like home. And politics is tough. And then it would be the first woman, first person of color. Like, fundraising, all of my insecurities are triggered in many ways by the campaign process, like pictures and videos. And then I had a friend, funny enough, who was on our board of ed elected position, but also worked at Columbia in a different department, said like, are you going to step down from council? And I was like, no. And she's like, well, do you want to train the next mayor or be the next mayor? And that quote stayed with
That's
me.
an interesting question.
And then I said, oh, wow. Because she's like, that's what's going to happen. And then
Wow.
I said, you know what? Let's just try it. And again, I had a general and a primary. all of the elements of fundraising, all of the elements of how to leverage social media, were a lot for someone who I think I'm a bit more private than I even thought I was. But when I would connect with the Latino community, when I would connect with African-American women, who would just cry and were so proud, when I connect with kids, like high school kids, young girls, I just sort of felt like it was going to be hard, but I was I was representing a community that had not seen themselves. And it really just galvanized me. And I was like, you know what? Why not have a mama bear energy with a law degree at the table? You know what I mean?
I love that.
Here we are.
Mama bear energy. I'll finish with this question. What do you think that 16-year-old girl who wrote that essay would think now?
I would cry. She would be like,
I would cry too. You're making me cry.
She would say, what are you? We are what? Like, oh my God, I really am. New Rochelle.
I'm crying too. You're literally making me cry.
New Rochelle as a 6-year, that's why, oh my God. And I remember thinking this was like the prettiest community. I visited for a trip and the high school looked like a castle. And so I was like, I wonder how expensive that school is. And they were like, no, it's a public school. And I just remember thinking this was like the prettiest community. And I'm its mayor? Are you serious? What? That's all she would be saying. She would be like, you're lying. And I'd have to show her the picture because she's always wanted evidence, even as a 16-year-old.
Yeah. New Rochelle is very lucky to have you, Mayor, to be honest. And I mean, just, we all are. And so thank you so much. I want to have you back and talk again about, I would love to dive into this. It's hard to be an elected official. I mean, this is called an honorable profession because we believe that this is an honorable profession. It's more important than ever. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And we're so happy to have you part of this network and really appreciate you coming and telling your story today.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you to New Deal leaders. Honestly, it was like the best 2 days I'd spent all year. And you really just like got me like really inspired and encouraged to keep going. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at NewDEAL for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.